On Monday, February 13th, 2017, at around 1:30 p.m., two best friends, Liberty German and Abigail Williams, went for a hike on the Monon High Bridge trail in Delphi, Indiana. Shortly after 2 p.m., a man approached the girls. He then ordered them down the hill to their eventual death. Their bodies were found by searchers the following day on Tuesday, February 14th, at around noon, on a stretch of private property just 50 feet from Deer Creek and within a half a mile from the bridge. The identity of the suspect, now known as Bridge Guy, remains unknown. Police have revealed very little information outside of a short snippet from a video recorded by Liberty German of Bridge Guy approaching the girls, walking the Monon High Bridge, and a voice clip taken from the same video where the suspect is heard saying, "Guys, down the hill." This suspect or suspects must be apprehended. One of the best ways to solve this case is to raise awareness through public discussion. There is hope the suspect's identity will be revealed and law enforcement will have their day in bringing justice to the families. If you know this suspect, please contact law enforcement immediately by the telephone number or email address provided in the description of this episode. Never rationalize a tip as not being related. Someone out there knows this man, and that person could be you. And I want to welcome everyone to another episode of the JS podcast. My name is Juras, and today we're going to be continuing on in the Delphi murders investigation. This is officially part 2 of my investigation in this now cold case. You know, it's a debate whether or not this case is cold, but I would actually lean towards that it's pretty cold. All of this information on this episode, and today I'm going to be continuing on where I left off on part 1, and that's right at the point where the girls are actually reported missing to the police. Before I jump into the second part of the timeline in the story, I just want to quickly breeze through the sections that I have planned to cover during this recording. So initially, as some of my listeners from part 1 will probably remember, I sort of entailed that I would probably have enough time on part 2 to actually analyze the visual and audio assets, which would be, the 4 words that we could hear from the main suspect, "Guys down the hill," as well as the visual assets, that 1-second clip of the bridge guy walking. Now, actually, when I was conducting my research for, part 2 this week, I actually realized there's way too much information for me to actually fit these details in part 2. So those details, the analysis of the visual and audio assets that have been released by law enforcement, those details will actually fall back a little bit to episode number 3 in this case, which would be episode number 6 of the podcast. And today the sections would be, the second part of the timeline. So that would generally be from the time that the girls are reported missing, which would be around 5:20 p.m. on the day when they disappeared, February 13th, 2017, up to the point where they're discovered. After that, I will be talking a little bit about the law enforcement's response. I have some clips lined up for you guys as well. These clips are of the multiple press conferences conducted by law enforcement that I think it's really important for you guys to look at. If you haven't already, I think it will paint a better picture in this case for sure. We're also going to be talking about the New Direction press conference in the case, and the multiple additional details released on that New Direction press conference, or just in general, because some of the details were released a few days after the New Direction press conference. It actually happened a few years after the murders, and all of the, I guess, opinions, as like, I don't know, public opinions found online, as well as my own opinions. I will definitely share those with you regarding what I think about the whole situation, how the information was released. We're also going to be talking about the newest developments in this case, as well as, what the law enforcement is doing at this point. So that will conclude the second part of the investigation into the Delphi murders. Now, I'm looking at, my notes here. I just want to give a little prelude into the part 3. So for the part 3, I'm probably gonna be looking at the area and the physical evidence left in the scene, the conditions of the bodies, as well as those analysis of the visual assets and audio assets. As of recording this podcast, just around the middle of January 2021, I'm thinking of doing that for part 3. So without any further ado, guys, strap yourself in. This was longer than it had to be, the intro, and let's get right to it. Right, so continuing on in the timeline, the last time we stopped right at around when the girls were reported missing, to the police, which was at around 5:20 p.m. Family members call the police, they report the girls missing. Now, shortly after that phone call, police actually arrives to the scene. I have some information that at approximately 5:25 p.m., so around 5 minutes later, Becky Patty, the grandmother of Liberty, tries to contact Anna Williams, the mother of Abigail Williams. Apparently, Becky is unable to do that, so she decides to drive to Anna's house, and when she arrives there, she's actually told that Anna is at work at that particular point in time. Now, at this point, Mike calls Becky because remember, Mike is still at the scene, I'm assuming, and Becky is at Anna's house. And Mike tells Becky that pretty much the police said that both of them need to arrive to the police station to, file a missing persons report, because apparently, to my understanding, both legal guardians need to be at the same time, in the police station for, the missing persons report to be filed. So Becky actually, she doesn't drive straight to the police station, to my understanding and what I've managed to gather. She actually drives to Anna Williams' workplace, and I'm assuming while she was driving, Anna calls Becky because, she just had gotten a chance to check her phone. And on the phone call, Becky fills Anna in with all of the, newest developments that the two girls are now missing after being left, on the trail to go hiking a little bit. And they decide to meet up at the police station instead of the trail, I'm assuming. As all of this is happening, some family members actually took to Facebook to ask for help. I have a post from Jamie Bovier. I'm sorry if I mispronounced his name. He stated, "Okay, everyone, I need help. Libby and a friend are missing. They went to walk the trails around the High Bridge today. And we have had no contact for the last 4 hours. She's not answering her phone. If anyone knows anything, please call the Carroll County Police Department, and please share this post as well." So everyone's really concerned for the girls at this point. Social media posts are being made, to plead for help or any sort of assistance from the local public. At around 6 p.m., a massive search began. After hearing the girls went missing on social media, local residents actually showed up to help the search in coordination with the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, Delphi Police Department, and Delphi Fire Department. The fire station is used as a staging ground for volunteers. Together they searched the trail and surrounding area. Liberty's sister, Kelsey, went to the police station where she was questioned about what she remembers from dropping the girls off earlier. Kelsey also shows the police the 2 Snapchats posted to Liberty's story. I think this is a good indication at that point to everyone where, potentially the girl's last location was. Um, Also, I think it's worth mentioning here that during Kelsey's, Liberty's sister live stream, because she has become a really good spokesman for this case. She has stated that she felt really bad at first in the police station and just in general the investigators following the this whole situation. They have sort of really questioned Kelsey really hard because she was pretty much the last person who is known to have seen the girls alive. So she was, at first she was really feeling really bad that she was questioned. She stated, I believe, that she later on realized that this is part of the course of the investigation, and now she realizes that all of these questions and suspicion raised, because I assume the police raised a little bit suspicion. In the beginning of the case, you don't really know who's responsible for the murders of the girls, so you would probably want to question every single person involved. So she actually stated that she understands that that's part of the course, and now she feels okay with it. But at that point, we could just imagine how she must have felt. She clearly had nothing to do with the girls' murders, and now she's getting almost interrogated by the police because she's the last known person who has seen the girls. I mean, that's a dreadful place to be in, that's for sure. At some point, Mike Patty actually returns to the house to gather all of the electronics, which would be iPods, or computers or any other types of electronics, and all of the relevant cell phone information, so that the police could start requesting AT&T, which was their I believe cell phone provider, so that AT&T could ping Liberty's phone. I have this information that an article is published by the WLFI, which is just a news station in Indiana, and in this article Mike Patty is interviewed, and this is his quote: "The cell phone has been pinging around town, and here there was a cell phone tower, but the ping was last noted around 5 to 6 hours ago, and they say the phone is now dead. I saw texts where they got delivered, but they never got read." I'm assuming that he saw texts on the phone. I may be mistaken here, but I'm pretty sure that he said that he saw texts on the phone. And when you get a message, you could, if you check it, then there's pretty much this indication that you have seen the message, on Facebook and things like that. I'm sure we all remember situations where we, intentionally try avoid getting the seen on our messages when we don't want to respond to someone. So I think everyone understands what I'm getting at here, that the phones actually received the messages that I'm assuming Derek, German, and pretty much everyone in the family were sending to Libby, regarding where she was at, because everyone was trying to locate her. But those text messages were not seen on the phone, you know what I mean? So that's actually a pretty good detail, to be honest with everyone. Now let's jump into the evening of the first day of their disappearance, and at 10:29 p.m. WRTV television channel, which is just a local television channel. Actually, this channel has a news station, like a news outlet or something like that, and they write articles on there, like a website. And they wrote that the girls' cell phones are either dead or turned off. So that's what the detail we have gotten at 10:29 p.m. I'm reading here that source for this is not given within this article. So who knows? Who knows if that's credible. At around 11:59 p.m., a different WLFI article, from a different station, with an original publishing date of February 13th, 2017, on the same day, said dozens of deputies, Delphi police officers, and firefighters have been out searching the banks. Drones have been out. Tobe Lozenby, said the Department of Natural Resources was going to search the water Monday evening. So just to clarify, I'm assuming the article was published or around midnight, but apparently the search of the water was probably conducted earlier in the day, and the article was probably lagging behind a little bit, from what I'm assuming. So let's jump to the following day, which would be the Tuesday of February 14th, 2017, the second day of the girls missing. At this point, nobody has yet located the girls. And let's start right at the beginning of this day, which would be 12 a.m., just as midnight hit. And, the date has changed to the following day. The officially sanctioned search was called off by law enforcement due to darkness and the concern for volunteer safety. The search was planned to resume the next morning. I will talk about the criticisms of this particular decision on the second part of this episode, so I'm not putting this away to like another episode. I will talk about this, especially one of the girls' mother, biological mother, is really not happy with this particular decision. So the search is called off at 12 a.m., just as a time stamp for us. At this point, Carroll County Sheriff, the same Tobe Lozenby, said in a news release that there was no reason to suspect foul play or to believe the girls were in immediate danger. And apparently the biggest concern at that point for, law enforcement was exposure to the elements. Firefighters and civilians unofficially continued to search throughout the night. I have some information that sometime later in the night, Mike drove Becky, the grandparents of Liberty, Mike drove Becky home so she could get some well-needed sleep. Along their drive, they observed many flashlights, and this is their quote, people everywhere. After dropping Becky off, Mike Patty came back to the trail to continue searching for the girls. We can, just gauge that the police at this point, they packed up, we'll continue tomorrow. There's no indication the girls are in any immediate danger. I mean, is there no indication? I don't know. We'll discuss this a little bit later. The family members, they believe that the girls are in immediate danger. I found it very interesting that one of the main points given by law enforcement, and I don't want to crap on the law enforcement, I think they're trying to do their best here. One of their main points or like key details, like a key piece of reasoning why they would call off the search at 12 a.m. is, the safety of the volunteers. But they didn't tell the volunteers to stop searching, or at least from my understanding, that was not like sort of portrayed to the volunteers. Yo, this is gonna get dangerous. These trails are really rough. You should watch out, guys. Maybe let's start off tomorrow. The volunteers stay there all night. Flashlights and everything. Delphi community really came together to search for the girls. So this is crazy, because this detail doesn't even make any sense. You call off the official search, you damn well know that people of Delphi will continue on searching. So I don't want to go on a tangent here. I'll save it for the end, and I won't actually give any personal opinions as of this episode, so, that's for the future. At this point in the episode, I actually want to play a few clips, news clips, from the media so that, my audience could get a better gauge of what's actually happening. So at 12:59 a.m., a WLFI news clip regarding the missing girls was uploaded to YouTube on February 14th, 2017. Listen up, guys.
Top story tonight, 2 Carroll County girls have gone missing near the Monon High Bridge trail in Delphi. News 18's Alexis Moberger joins us live and reports how several law enforcement agencies are looking for them. Alexis.
Brittany, the two 13-year-old girls went missing hours ago and were told they haven't been answering their phones ever since. The Carroll County Sheriff's Office say the girls were last seen around 1 o'clock this afternoon near the Monon High Bridge trail. Liberty, or Libby German, and Abigail Williams were dropped off by a family member. When she came back to pick them up around the arranged time, they never showed up. The Sheriff's Office was then notified around 5:30 tonight, and right now several deputies are out looking for the two girls and are even using drones to help locate them. We're also told that DNR is out by the water searching and trying to locate the girls as well. Police are asking for the public's help. If anyone knows anything about where they could be or where they were last seen, they are encouraged to contact the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. We will be following this story and will bring you updates as they become available. Reporting live in Carroll County, Alexis Moberger, News 18.
I don't know why I said listen up, guys. I hope no one took it as a offense. I wanted to say listen in, guys. So no disrespect to my listeners. I love you guys. Actually, a few hours later, at around 4:43 a.m., another news report was actually made by a reporter that was on the scene, who said people were back out searching for the girls early in the morning. So this is almost 5 a.m. in the morning, and I'm assuming just as morning hours started to hit, just as daybreak was about to approach, people were lining up to search for the girls. Let's listen in to that news report.
On that breaking news from Carroll County.
Police continue to search for two teenage girls who went missing early yesterday. Now, Naomi Peskovich, she is in Carroll County gathering information and joins us with what we know so far and about where those girls were last seen. Good morning.
Ben and Julia, good morning to you. This is the entrance to the trail where those two 13-year-olds were last seen. Officers, law enforcement, they have stopped the search for the night. But in the meantime, other folks have come out. We've seen family. We just saw a group who didn't even know the girls come out here because they heard the story and wanted to come out. They're here with flashlights searching for them, doing anything they can. There's been so much pressure to try and find these two young girls since they went missing yesterday afternoon. In the meantime, we do want to give you another look at these photos. This is so important so that if you do see them, you can let police know. Both of them, again, 13 years old. They're both about 5 feet 4 inches tall. Liberty, or Libby German, she has shoulder-length blonde hair and blue eyes. She was wearing a tie-dyed shirt, some gray sweatpants, and also black shoes. Then there's Abby, or Abigail Williams. She's also 5'4", with medium-length blonde hair and hazel eyes. She was wearing a gray zip-up sweatshirt and some jeans. Meantime, this search started again yesterday afternoon. The two actually had the day off school yesterday, so they decided they wanted to have some fun, spend some time on the trail, and take some photographs. They were dropped off by a family member. They were supposed to be picked up around 3 o'clock, but when that family member arrived, the girls were not here. They weren't answering their text messages or phone calls. Libby's grandfather tells us the search started right away.
We started going through all the social media things, picking up, looking at Facebook. Has she talked to anybody, or had the girls been talking with anybody, Snapchatting or whatever the kids do today, back and forth, and really didn't find anything. The last message I think we found going out was like at about 2:30, which was like a Snapchat of a picture of them out there on this bridge on the trail system. And that was the last communication we've had.
And that bridge is a hallmark of this area, the Monon High Bridge. It's on this sign behind us. It's a place that's frequented by folks who live around here, but still the conditions of the bridge may be dangerous. Libby's grandfather is going to tell us why. That's coming up in our next half hour of Sunrise. In the meantime, we've shared these pictures online. If you see them, please help the family and share those photos as well. Ben and Julia.
All right. Yeah. Hopefully this will lead to finding those girls. Thanks.
And at 6 a.m., there were some more news reports coming in stating that people were still out searching, even though it's still dark, and even though the official crews, law enforcement, had stopped their search for the evening and they would continue when the sun comes up. Also, the reporter talks a little bit about how the Amber Alert has not yet been issued since there is nothing to indicate the girls have been abducted. Listen in, guys.
This is breaking news from Channel 13 Eyewitness News.
And we'll get a look at weather and traffic for you in a moment. But first, we do want to get to that breaking news from overnight. A desperate search to find two young teenage girls reported missing.
Two Indiana families filled with uncertainty this morning. Our Naomi Pescovitz is in Delphi right now, where volunteers searched, Naomi, really late into the night trying to track down these girls. What's the latest on the situation there?
Yeah, and Ben and Julia, we've seen people walking into this trail over the last hour or so, volunteers who don't even know the family. Also online, folks are saying they are still out searching, even though it's dark, it's early in the morning, and the official crews, law enforcement, they have stopped their search for the evening, and they'll continue when the sun comes up. Meantime, we want to give you another good look at what these two girls look like. Both of them are 13 years old. They're both 5'4". Libby, or Liberty German, she has short, shoulder-length blonde hair and blue eyes. She was wearing a tie-dyed shirt and black shoes. Abby has medium-length blonde hair and hazel eyes, wearing a gray zip-up sweatshirt and jeans. Folks asking, why were these girls on the trail yesterday? Well, they had the day off from school, so they decided they want to come out to this trail here, take some pictures, have some fun together, goof off a little bit. They were dropped off by a family member. They had a time and a place to be picked up, but when that family member got here, they were not here. They were not answering their phones. They weren't answering any text messages. We did speak with Libby's grandfather earlier this morning, asking him if it was common for his granddaughter to do something like this. Listen to what he said.
Because we got a lot of people putting, they're putting their lives on the line really out there. There's some pretty rugged trails in some of this. No, absolutely not. She's, I don't want to say she's a perfect angel, but she's really a good homebodied kid, very, straight A kid, straight A student. She's involved in a lot of things, sports, swimming, softball.
And there aren't any lights out there on the trail, but they were near a bridge, and that's where they were taking those pictures. That bridge may not be very sturdy, but even this morning we're seeing some flashlights off in the distance as folks continue that search. Some of those volunteers out here very early into this morning. Meantime, you brought up the question about an Amber Alert. We do want to address that. Carroll County saying they do not believe there was any foul play. They don't have any reason to believe these girls are in immediate danger. And when an Amber Alert is issued, it's because there's been a confirmed abduction. That's why they have not issued one, but they'll be back out here this morning. We'll continue to ask questions and see if they've learned anything else. The best thing folks at home can do, and this is a request from the family as well, is to keep sharing these pictures of Libby and Abby so that if anyone has seen them, maybe they've wandered off onto another part of the county, they can find them and call Carroll County Police. Ben and Julia.
Yeah, very good to know. That's the age of social media. Can certainly be a big help, especially when the sun rises, too. Might help in that search. Naomi Pescovitz, live for us in Delphi. Thank you.
After listening to these reports and just in general doing my, more in-depth investigation than the one that I did for Solvable Mysteries podcast, my other podcast, on that podcast, I actually said that the family members stayed and searched after the official search was actually called off. Now, looking back at this information and looking at the timeline in detail, it does seem to me that the trail and, the general area where the girls were last seen, that area was actually searched fairly thoroughly, throughout the night, and the local participation was definitely a lot bigger than I initially assumed. So definitely kudos to the Delphi community, they definitely surprised me with this. Moving a little bit further into the timeline at 11:26 a.m., so almost at around noon, reportedly volunteers, who were searching were told by law enforcement to avoid the location where the girls had last been seen, which was the east side of the bridge, to preserve the scent of the scene for the search dogs, And at first I was thinking to myself, wait, where is this information regarding what the dogs actually find, Later on, I actually listened to an interview that Sheriff Tobe Lozenby had given to one of the news outlets, and he stated that the dogs were on their way at the time when the girls' bodies were located. So day 2 of the disappearance, actually the dogs are on their way. They don't they don't make it in time. The bodies were found before that. More on that a little bit later. A little note from from the future, I guess. Liberty's sister Kelsey German actually went on the infamous indie podcast, a podcast hosted by Joe Melino, and described the two search parties in the area during the discovery of the girls. And from what I can understand, at around 12:15 p.m., the two bodies were found. Kelsey has described what she was doing during this particular time on the infamous indie podcast, and also talked about the two search parties in the area during the discovery. Now, I have the snippet of this particular conversation, like this point in the conversation, so I'm just gonna play it for you guys. I definitely don't want to put words in Kelsey's mouth, so let her explain what she was doing at that time.
Three of us chose to cross the bridge to look underneath the bridge on the opposite side, and that's where I ended up hearing that we found the bodies.
When you were there, do you remember what you saw?
At High Bridge?
Right when they found the bodies.
Okay, well, first off, I was standing on the trail that's right under the bridge, looking out into the woods, and somebody yelled up that they had found a shoe. When they found the shoe, they had asked what kind of shoes the girls were wearing, and they yelled up the type of shoe that Libby was wearing. So I yelled down and told them that. Actually, then the person that had asked that had put up their phone and saw two deer in the ground moving, and so he was looking to see what it might be, and he saw two deer standing up there, and when he saw them, he moved the camera down, and that's when we found them.
Did you ever actually go and see them up close at that point?
At that point, I had not. I wanted to run towards them, but the girl that was with me in my group had held me down and told me that we don't know who they are yet. We don't know that it's them. We don't know what they look like. We don't know anything that's happening right now, so you can't go to them. And so she kind of held me and made sure that I stayed there.
So from what we could tell from that conversation on the podcast, Kelsey at first talked a little bit about how they were split up into, different groups by the fire department. And, the groups then searched in different locations. So Kelsey was part of the group that went to search for the girls at around the Monon High Bridge trail. Now, I'm assuming it's weird how, law enforcement told them to stay away from that area to preserve the scent for the dogs that were on their way. But whatever, I don't really know the logistics, how that happened. Don't think that plays too big of a role in this case. Then she described what she was doing during the discovery of the bodies. We could, hear that from the clip. Apparently, she was with some other girl that started holding her. And, this other girl was like probably trying to comfort Kelsey. I'm assuming that she probably knew at that point that this could definitely be the two girls. It's interesting because Kelsey said that, this girl was actually holding her. That would mean that, she was not able to go and look at the bodies, which is pretty interesting. I wonder whether or not Kelsey German knows about, the condition of the bodies. I'm definitely going to be talking about these details on future episodes, I would assume. So, just one thing to mention. Apparently, Kelsey did not witness the crime scene, apparently. In a Fox 59 article, Becky Patty also recounted the discovery. Her quote regarding the person who found the bodies was, "He saw something. He could not figure out what it was. There were two deer standing up there, but as he looked up to see what that was, that is when he saw them. And they were lying in the grass between a group of trees deep in the woods." This is an interesting quote. The deer situation. He saw something. He could not figure out what it was. There were two deer. The animal, the deer. I don't know what that means. Does this mean that the girls were actually, did the person who saw them really saw deer, or did he see silhouettes that looked like deer, and upon further investigation he found out that that was the girl's body? So was that actual deer standing next to the bodies, or just a silhouette that the person got confused with a deer? I mean, I don't know. I don't think this plays a big part. So the person who found the bodies was apparently a volunteer searcher. And Becky also stated in this particular interview with Fox 59 that, he called his wife, who was with us, and said, "We found them. My sister came up and she was crying and she said, 'I'm sorry.'" And this is an interesting part of the story right here. The Indie Channel, which is pretty much I guess another news outlet, wrote an article describing the location as, quote, "The bodies were found on private property about 50 feet from the shore of Deer Creek. A set of footprints are what led volunteers to the area where the bodies were found." So, whoa. Hold up. Footprints? During my investigation on the Solvable Mysteries podcast, I had no clue about any of these footprints, and apparently there were footprints found, and actually it's a high chance that they are a part of the investigation. So that's pretty interesting. This is another additional detail that I think is just a little bit underlooked in this case. At 2 p.m., a joint press conference is held by law enforcement with Indiana State Police, Public Information Officer Kim Riley, Carroll County Sheriff Tobe Lozenby, and Delphi Police Chief Steve Mullins. Now, they all announced that the two bodies had been found, but they do not confirm the identities of the bodies as Abigail and Liberty. They said that search efforts will now be scaled back. They said that, the matter is now being investigated as a crime scene and that they suspected foul play. I listened to this interview. Seemed like they were not super well prepared for for the situation. I think one reporter actually asked whether or not, the search was officially called off. And I don't think any of the three men talking to the news outlets actually knew that, if it was called off. So they just stated it's definitely scaled down. So I don't know, maybe it's just me. But it seemed to me that was a little bit not super professional at that point. But hey guys, don't take my word for it. I want to play you this clip from this press conference. I think it's the longest press conference I will want to play on this episode, on part 2, and I'm not even sure how much of this press conference I will play as well. So just listening, guys, I want you to get a better picture of what is being disclosed, to the public.
I'm Riley. I'm with the Indiana State Police. I'm the Public Information Officer from the Lafayette Post.
Steve Mullen, Delphi Police Department, Chief of Police.
Tobe Lozenby, Carroll County Sheriff.
Basically, we're going to make this, it's going to be short and sweet. We don't have that much at this point in time. Basically, what we've got, we have found 2 bodies. Is that the Sugar Creek?
Deer Creek.
Deer Creek, sorry. In Deer Creek, about a mile east of town. We are investigating this as a crime scene. We suspect foul play. We have not made positive identification of the 2 bodies, so we're not going to be releasing any information on them at this point in time. We've got the Indiana State Police is assisting the Carroll County Sheriff's Department and the Delphi City Police Department in the investigation here. We also have the FBI Crime Scene Investigation Group here out of Indianapolis. And one thing the family asked us to do is to thank all the communities around Delphi and the people here in Delphi for assisting in attempting to locate these the 2 young children that were missing earlier. They just wanted to say thank you to those people, and thank you They were just wanted to express their gratitude toward the hard work that was done in helping search for these children.
Has the search been called off for these two teenagers?
Not officially, because we have not positively identified the bodies at this point in time.
Do you have people still searching the woods and creeks and fields?
We still have, there's still people out looking, but it has been scaled back. Let me just put it that way.
Are the bodies of the two individuals recovered, are those of young female children?
I'm not at liberty to give that information out as of this time.
Who found them?
I'm not going to say at this point in time.
Why do you believe that there was foul play?
Just the way the bodies were found. That's about all I can say at this point in time.
Were they in the water?
They were on the edge of the water, from what I understand. That's about the best I can tell you.
Any outside injuries?
I'm not going to make a comment on that at this time.
What time were they found?
That I'm not sure. 12:15?
12:15.
About 12:15 this afternoon.
Are there any either suspects or persons of interest being questioned at this time?
We have not gotten that far into the investigation, so I cannot comment one way or the other.
How far down was it from the bridge? Downstream?
Probably more than a mile, or less than a mile, rather.
I'm going to say somewhere between half and 3/4 of a mile, I'm guessing. The road curves back in there, so it's really hard to tell as the crow flies how far it is, but I'm going to guess about a half to 3/4 of a mile back there.
It wasn't that far from where the search started. You mentioned hours of searching, hundreds of people. So were they not in plain sight in that area, that it would have taken a long time for you guys to find them?
We really don't want to comment on that at this point in time.
Are there any
We don't really want to put out too much information at this point in time. Something I will do, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm going to probably put tweets out approximately every hour on updates. It may be as much as that I'm just going to say we have nothing new at this time, but I will try to do that for at least the next 4 to 6 hours.
How do you suspect, do you presume that these are the two people you were looking for?
I really can't comment on that at this point in time.
Were there any visible injuries or other signs of trauma to the bodies that were discovered?
We're not going to make any comment on that either. I know we're not giving you much. I understand that, but I mean we're at the baby stages of this case. At this point in time, I cannot release really much more information. As soon as I can, I will be more than happy to put stuff out.
One final thing. You started off with a statement about finding the bodies. You said Sugar Creek. Can you say that over again with the right creek in it?
Oh,
Deer Creek.
the bodies were found in the Deer Creek area, just east of town, about a mile from the 3/4 to a mile east of the, what is that? The
Freedom Bridge.
Freedom Bridge. I know I didn't help you much there, but
It's not from Freedom Bridge or the Monon
High Bridge.
High Bridge?
I'm not sure which bridges.
They're two separate bridges.
I know. So which
Freedom Bridge is on the Heartland, and
Okay.
High Bridge is the bridge that's farther up that used to be the railroad
So
bridge.
how far from High Bridge? I think that was the last known location.
Within probably 3/4 of a mile or so.
Okay, and how close were they to the area where they were supposed to be picked up by their relatives?
Within that 3/4 of a mile, so.
Okay, so without out of the way, let's move into the following day, February 15th, which was a Wednesday. At 8 a.m. in the morning, autopsies began in Terre Haute, probably butchered that name, on the bodies that were discovered during Tuesday's search. Now, 4 hours later, at 12 a.m., the autopsies are completed. However, some other local news sources lists this time at 10 a.m. So, I don't think it's that much of an important detail whether or not, the autopsies were completed in 4 hours or in 2 hours. Maybe if we would look really in depth into this whole situation, which I apparently will be doing in future episodes, maybe we could gauge something, if the autopsy took a longer time to complete pretty much, that would probably indicate to us that there was more to do. And if there's more to do during an autopsy, maybe there are, I don't know where I'm going with this. Let's leave it for now, but just a thought for you guys. 3 p.m. The Indiana State Police and Carroll County Sheriff's Department hold a news conference confirming that the bodies found Tuesday are those of Liberty and Abigail. They say the case is being investigated as a double homicide at this point. Also, the still image taken from the video clip of Bridge Guy walking was released to the public. However, the full video clip wasn't released for more than 2 years later. More on that shortly. We could also jump a few days into the timeline, so we're still staying in 2017. On February 22nd, press conference, in a press conference, law enforcement said that Liberty started to video record before criminal behavior began to occur, as if she was anticipating something bad is going to happen shortly. I don't know, maybe law enforcement has some more details that would indicate this. Maybe like a conversation between the girls regarding a strange man approaching them or something like that. Maybe Liberty mentioned to Abigail or vice versa, hey, look at the man, he's pretty interesting and looks pretty creepy and he's approaching us over, the bridge. Maybe something like that. I think I will speculate on this a little bit later. An interesting quote from this conference is that, this young lady is a hero, there's no doubt. To have enough presence of mind to activate that video system on her cell phone to record what we believe is criminal behavior that's about to occur. So, this is a quote from that news conference. We also have another quote from the press conference. The recording was longer than what has been released to the public. Police won't release any more to protect the integrity of the investigation, but they've seen the video and likely won't be able to stop thinking about it. What the hell does that mean? Is it gruesome or something like that, or is there some creepy details? Who knows at this point, right? So when Sheriff Tobe Lozenby was asked point blank, if the attack was recorded in a video, during the interview, he answered that it was not. And I think it's a pretty interesting, pretty key detail right here. This is a confirmed fact. The actual attack is not on the video recording. So I would assume Liberty started, to record the man approaching her. Then she probably put the phone in her pocket, because remember, the audio clip that we now have, guys down the hill, came from the same video. At least I would definitely assume. This information is also not out there, is not completely confirmed, but I think the general consensus is that both the video clip and the audio clip came from the same video recording. So I think somewhere down the line, Liberty probably stopped the video recording. On the same day, actually police, on the February 22nd, 2017, Indiana State Police also released an audio taken from Liberty's phone, presumably taken from the video she had taken as well, of Bridge Guy approaching them. However, the clip is only of 3 words. The male voice is being heard saying "down the hill." 2 years later, we will receive an additional word, which is "guys down the hill." Now, in this WeTHR article that I'm reading right now, it was written on the 12th of August 2017. Reporter Emily Longnecker writes, quote, "Police say the girls mostly talked about stuff girls talk about in the recording, but they also mention the man." So, I definitely think that, police probably has more indications to believe that, Liberty or Abigail or both of them actually sensed that, something bad is about to happen. And maybe actually Liberty says something like, I'm taking a recording, he's approaching us, I'm taking a recording, or something like that. Or maybe Abigail said, take a recording, film it, take a recording, something like that. think it's definitely not out of the question for us to speculate that that could have been the case. The first sketch was actually provided on July 17th in 2017, and this sketch was a composite sketch and was an artist's composite of the information collected by all the agencies involved in the double murder investigation, including the FBI. Including the FBI. So that's what, Indiana State Police Sergeant Kim Riley stated. Have some information that, a composite sketch is a facial composite, or a composite sketch or a facial composite is a graphical representation of one or more eyewitnesses' memory of, a face as recorded by a composite artist. So it could have been complied out of multiple sightings, and the Wikipedia regarding this first sketch states that it had apparently been drawn by police from eyewitnesses to a certain hiker of the Delphi historic trails on the day of when the girls vanished. More on this guy later on, or I should say more on this sketch later on. This is going to be very important. So for the longest time, this was the guy that everyone was looking at, the first sketch. However, we will find out in the New Direction press conference conducted more than 2 years after the murders of the girls. The conference happened on April 22nd, 2019. Law enforcement told people to not use this sketch, that I just referred to, not use the first sketch anymore, as the person in the sketch is no longer a person of interest in the girls' murders. Now, this is where we finally arrive at the New Direction press conference, or just in general, the New Direction section of the timeline. So at first, on April 19th, 2019, Indiana State Police announced a new direction in the case. And, actually, only right now, I believe that I fully understand the meaning of new direction in this case. In my opinion, this means that law enforcement is no longer focusing on an older man, but instead is looking into a man of a younger, more youthful appearance. Everything went wrong in terms of the presentation. There was a cluttered desktop, there were mic problems, video problems, etc. Like everything in this New Direction press conference, like everything, like, I don't know, man, didn't really seem that professional initially, you know what I mean? So the New Direction press conference was actually conducted a few days after, the initial statement that we're taking this new direction. So it happened on April 22nd. During that, I guess, press conference, on behalf of state police and the multi-agency task force, Superintendent Doug Carter released more materials a few days later into the press conference. So first of all, a sketch of the person who the Indiana State Police believe attacked Libby and Abby was released, during the conference. And actually, I have some information that, let's take a quick look at the two sketches, because I want to compare both of these sketches. So the initial sketch, the one with the taxi cab that was released back in 2017, has a more round shape of the nasal tip. The nose tip is a little bit more rounded off. So I think this is a key distinction between the two sketches. The second sketch has a more sharp nose tip. You can clearly see that. I would assume that this was done intentionally by law enforcement. I wonder, why would they focus on the nose? Why would they focus on the nose? I'm dying to know this detail. Why the nose? Strong I'm not gonna pronounce this correctly, strong nasolabial folds, as well as the hooded eyes, are still present in the new sketch. So the first thing that I mentioned, probably, I don't know, guys, how to even pronounce that word, so probably won't understand what I meant, but the eyes, look at the eyes shape, the hooded eyes. What I'm getting from these two sketches, right, that they're pretty certain that this person who they're looking for had hooded eyes, but now they have reason to believe that the nose is a little bit more defined, a little bit more sharp. It's not rounded. And just in general, you know, the new sketch, the 2019 sketch, is of a more youthful looking man, I would say. The official stated reason for this change, according to the press, was, quote, "As the investigation has progressed, information has been continuously reviewed and examined, and this sketch more accurately depicts the face of the suspect from the video recorded on Liberty's German cell phone," so we know that it was captured on Liberty was recording, while she and Abigail were on the High Bridge. This raises a few questions to me. The main question is that I wonder how they make out anything on or out of that, you know, video recording, because to me that definitely didn't seem like a high resolution picture or like video, and you know, I don't really understand how you could actually get a sense of the man's face in you know, for say from the video recording, but because the police did state, you know, this new sketch more accurately depicts the man seen on the video recording. Maybe they meant in a sense that they believe a certain witness beforehand saw this man as well, and they believe that, you know, Bridge Guy is the suspect that was also seen by multiple witnesses, and those witnesses had, you know, a better look at the guy than, you know, what we can see from the, you know, video of him walking for 1 second. Maybe that's the case. During the New Direction press conference, Police Superintendent Doug Carter has said, quote, "We have concluded the first sketch released will become secondary as of today. The result of the new information and intelligence over time leads us to believe the sketch, which we will see shortly, is the person responsible for the murders of the 2 little girls." So that's his quote, and you know, shortly after that they unveiled the new sketch, you know, the younger looking person. Now, 2 days after the new sketch was given on the 24th of April, a news bulletin was released to clarify the relationship between the 2 sketches. Now, I think it's very important for us to read this bulletin, as it is one of the very few documents released by law enforcement that could provide us with information on this case. So let's just read it really quickly. So the name of this bulletin is Multi-Agency Task Force Clarifies Points About the Delphi Murder Suspect Sketches. Now, Delphi, Indiana. In the early days and months of the Delphi murder investigation, information was developed about suspect descriptions. It was initially believed the sketch that has been in public view over the last 2 years of a person in the age range of his 40s to 50s was a person of interest in this murder investigation. Now, as the investigation has matured and past information has been reassessed, it is the belief of investigators with the multi-agency task force that the person depicted in the sketch released on the April 22nd more accurately represents the person wanted for the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. It is important to distinguish these points about the 2 sketches. First, they are not the same person. Second, the person depicted in the originally released sketch is not presently a person of interest in the investigation. Third, the sketch released on April 22nd is representative of the face of the person captured in the video of Liberty German's cell phone as he was walking on the High Bridge. Fourth, the person in the sketch released April 22nd is described as having a youthful appearance, but could fall in the age range from his 20s to late 30s. Fifth, this person's appearance could look different today if he has grown a mustache, beard, or let his hair grow longer, or cut his hair shorter than it's depicted in the sketch. Members of the Delphi community should reflect back on people they know in in the community that look similar to the sketch released on April 22nd, especially if that person has changed their appearance since the murder that occurred in February of 2017. So that's the bulletin. I found the quote, "They are not the same person," interesting, and I think this detail needs some further clarification that I don't think I have at this point. I would like to know if the original sketch, the one with the taxi cab, is that particular sketch of a exact person seen on the trail, or is it just a broad compilation of multiple sightings, if you know what I mean? I'm pretty sure that this current sketch of the younger man is actually of a real person that was seen on the trails, but I wonder if the first original taxi cab sketch is that sketch also of a certain person, or is that just a mashup of the general idea that the police had of how the man probably looked. Now I will address this very soon on this very episode. We have some juicy information coming up very soon. One thing to mention that actually the new sketch, the sketch of the younger man that was released on 2019, this sketch was actually created earlier than the initial sketch with the taxi cab. According to an IndyStar article which writes, Master Trooper Taylor Bryant, a sketch artist with Indiana State Police who drew the new sketch, told IndyStar a sketch is based on how a particular witness describes the suspect. If there are several witnesses, Bryant would draw a sketch from each description. Bryant did not draw the sketch that police released in July of 2017. So apparently, Master Trooper Taylor Bryant actually drew this, youthful man's sketch initially. But then, for some reason, initially police released, and it was the focus of interest for 2 years, a sketch of an older person. And that older person's sketch was actually compiled later, and not even by the same artist that made the second released sketch, which was the first compiled sketch. I hope you guys are still with me here. And then we also have some more information regarding, the artist and his statements. The guy, Master Trooper Taylor Bryant, who made, the sketch that police is pushing right now, the younger looking dude sketch. So his quote is, "The witness is the main focus, so there's no input from law enforcement at all in the generation of the sketch, other than my presence as the artist," said Bryant. Bryant also stated that he used a, quote, "facial identification reference sheet that has a list of different categories, from head shapes to different eyebrows and noses. The witnesses will describe the suspect based on these categories. Quote, it's easier to do that than to describe the suspect using just words." I think it's a really good tactic. You give a person a palette of potential shapes and you let the person choose which shape resembles what they have in their memory the most. Also, it's worth mentioning that the sketches are not exact, Brian said. The renderings are a ballpark estimation of what a person looks like. That's his quote. Now, the sketch released in 2019 was drawn by Bryant on February 17th, 2017, only a few days after the victims' bodies were found. The picture was based on the description of a person who saw something that the person felt needed to be reported, according to Bryant. I believe Officer Bryant is referring to the 16-year-old female witness here who saw a strange man on the Freedom Bridge at 1:30 p.m., at the same day the girls were murdered. I talk about this situation on part 1 of the Delphi murders investigation. And this is where, the juicy information promised earlier, this is where it comes into play pretty much. Now, knowing that the sketches are of two different people, this brings up the question, why did the law enforcement, and why is the investigation's focus switched from the first sketch to the second sketch? That would mean if these are two different people, because this is stated on the bulletin that it's not the same person, meaning that these are two people, two persons, that would mean that police were looking into one person, and now they're not looking into that person, but they're looking into some other person. So does this mean that someone has already been cleared that we don't know about? Now, Kelsey German, Liberty's sister, has addressed some of the questions posted on Twitter. They had created several sketches, this is her quote. At the time, they believed the other one was more credible, that's her quote. And also stated, Kelsey stated that from what she understood, the switch was made because of a recent development in the investigation. This is Kelsey German giving us this information on Twitter, I believe. Now, there's a podcast called Best Case, Worst Case. This is the podcast name. Now, this podcast claims to have heard from their sources that the man in the July 17th sketch, the first sketch of a person with a taxi cab, the sketch that was not complied on July 17th, because that's of the newer, younger looking dude, but the older looking sketch, right? Now, the man in that sketch, according to this podcast, was arrested and cleared, hence the change of suspect. Usually when a podcast makes claims like this, you would probably think, some crazy claims, again on a podcast, but the two hosts of this particular podcast, Best Case, Worst Case, are pretty credible. One of the dudes on that podcast is Jim Clemente, who worked for the FBI for 22 years, in part as a supervisory special agent in the behavioral analysis unit, and Francie Hakes, a former federal prosecutor and the country's first national coordinator for child exploitation prevention and interdiction, a post appointed by the U.S. Attorney General. These guys have high credibility, so it's worth mentioning this speculation. I have their quotes from the podcast. I just want to read them to you guys. So Jim Clemente says his quote, and I think that what must have happened is they have taken these leads, they have interviewed literally thousands of people, and they have found someone who looks at the video that they released and says, yes, I definitely saw that guy minutes before the girls came by, and I saw his face, and that's where this sketch came from. And so the other sketch was somebody saw in the area and was suspicious about. Turns out it's a guy who's sexually interested in children, who's had multiple arrests for it, right? So this is the exact quote. I know it's not super clear, so I'll try to interpret it for you guys. Jim Clemente says that multiple persons of interest were actually witness on the day when the girls disappeared, and one of those people was actually one of the two people that were witnessed, that were persons of interest. One of them was actually identified, interviewed, and released. And apparently this guy who was interviewed and released was the same guy whose sketch was of a guy with a taxi cap on, and apparently he had a criminal record for some child stuff, some dark child exploitation stuff. Now, Francie Hakes says the police obviously know who they're looking for and spent a significant amount of time looking for the man in this sketch. And as you said, Jim, that man has turned out recently was arrested and was a sex offender, but we found out recently he's apparently not the killer. So yeah, just to, in a resume, these guys pretty much are, in cahoots, well, in a good way. I mean, with the law agencies all over the country, they have experience, and, I'm assuming they have really strong sources, and I think it's definitely worth mentioning. I think this makes sense, actually. When you think about it, they probably found the dude in the taxi cab, questioned him, interviewed him, raised their suspicion regarding this guy because he is a sex offender, but they later on released him and are now focusing on the new, younger looking dude. Now I'm thinking, did they found out about this? Did they clear the guy right before the press conference, the New Direction press conference? Because that would make sense. They just cleared it and let's switch to a new direction. Let's look for this other guy, because this one dude that we've been looking at, turns out he's okay. He's not the killer. Now, if they cleared him within like a few months of the investigation and they just did nothing for like a year or something like that, and that would be really bad. I really hope that that was not the case. I'm assuming that police only recently managed to clear this guy, and they switched to the newer looking dude, to the other suspect. I'm really hoping that they didn't just sit around for 2 years, I really hope so. So when confusions arose actually after the episode was released on this podcast, the podcast responded through Facebook saying, quote, "That is what we have heard from our sources," end quote. So if they are right, this would answer my question posed earlier, whether or not, the first released sketch with the taxi cab is an actual person of interest or just a general sketch composed of multiple sightings. Remember when I just let's say 20 minutes ago or something like that raised that question? Well, this question I think is answered, because I do believe, the credibility of this statement. I do believe that the first sketch, the old dude with the taxi cab, was an actual person who was, apprehended by the police and then cleared. And once that had happened, I would hope so that immediately after that they, began their new direction, and they didn't just sit around for a two-year period. Okay, so at this point of the podcast, I want to talk about, the main takeaways that we can take from the New Direction press conference that happened on April 22nd, 2019. I think we should begin with the fact that law enforcement stated, quote, "We also believe that this person is from Delphi currently or has previously lived here, visits Delphi on a regular basis, or works here. We believe this person is currently between the age range of 18 and 40, but might appear younger than his true age." So this would correlate to the theory that, the initial sketch with the taxi cab has been an older person and has been cleared, just as I've talked about now. So now they are focusing on the younger person seen at the Freedom Bridge by the 16-year-old girl witness, because, we know that the artist, Tom Taylor, I believe his name was, said that, he complied that sketch of that, from the sighting on Freedom Bridge. So I'm thinking, it's crazy, If we take a look at the video clip of Bridge Guy and listen to his voice, does he seem a youthful person? Because, honestly, from that video that I can see right now of him walking, I would definitely not cap his age at 40, or the audio, the audio guys down the bridge definitely doesn't sound like a younger person. I'd say maybe someone in between the ages of 40 and 50, could be in his 50s. I wouldn't put it past, the bridge guy being in his 60s Why is police saying that he's from the age of 18 to 40? Like, what is this? Like, what do they know? Like, we need this information. I believe we need this information. If they have something, I think they should give this information, because they tell us to help identify the suspect. We see an older looking dude walking on the bridge, and an older, an older person's voice saying, guys, down the hill. Now they're saying, but this guy looks young and could be from 18 to 40. So I don't know. Like, it's hard to comprehend. What's the logic here? Why would they not release, key details in this case at this point? So, as of, the recording of this podcast, I currently am getting a sense that law enforcement managed actually to uncover something in particular that they have not disclosed publicly, indicating that the suspect is a fairly young man. Because, I would definitely cap the age of the person in the newer sketch at 40. I would probably, I would cap it at maybe even 35. It looks like a younger person. However, I would not do the same for the video or the audio clips. Could law enforcement still be holding critical information almost 4 years into the death of the girls? If so, this would have to be a major detail in the case. How else would they be certain that Bridge Guy is younger than 40? Come on. This definitely seems very strange to me and makes me question if law enforcement is taking the best possible course in this case. Obviously, this is just my speculation and I could be completely wrong. Another interesting quote, the person in the sketch released on April 22nd is in his 20s to late 30s. This is the quote from law enforcement. Now, I would love to know what the strategy of law enforcement is at this particular point. And actually, I would even like to speculate here a little bit. It took them 2 years to change their direction, to change the course, to change the sketch and the suspect. Who knows if the investigation hasn't switched already to someone else once again. More on this in the final sections of this episode. Since we're talking about the main takeaways from the new direction investigation, another quote I want to mention here is, quote, he is described as a white male between 5'6" and 5'10" tall, weighing between 180 and 220 pounds, with reddish brown hair. One thing to quickly mention here, obviously without no disrespect, Liberty German's weight was around the same weight that this person is being described at. So it's interesting to me, like, I will say Liberty German definitely seemed like a strong girl. Like, she could definitely handle herself in, I would assume similar situations. This makes me believe that, to order her and Abigail, both of the girls at the same time down the hill to their potential death, I'm thinking that this person definitely either pistol whipped them, or had a knife. Also, I think it's very important to mention that initially law enforcement released stills from this video of the suspect, and only 2 years later, on April 22nd, 2019, during the New Direction press conference, law enforcement released about 1 second of video of which the previous stills had been taken from, on the video of Bridge Guy walking for 1 second. So it has only been released 2 years later. So as well as the additional word guys to the audio, because initially we only had down the hill, but now we have guys down the hill. So I have to wonder what the reason for this was. Why not show the man walking in the first place? I do see the point in not disclosing the word guys, as that word could be used to identify valuable tips, or even, like, fan out the fake admissions, because there's a bunch of crazy people who would probably want to admit to these killings, maybe someone who's already in prison, etc., etc., so they want to keep that word to themselves. That's all good, you could keep that to yourself. What's the reasoning for not releasing the 1 second video clip of the man walking? Please don't tell me that was just because the police and law enforcement did not know how to cut out a piece of video from a piece of video from like a whole thing. I hope that that's not the case. I hope that they didn't just like pause the phone, took like some screenshots and released those screenshots, because that's what they were technically able to do in Indiana. I'm hoping that was not what happened here. I'm really hoping. And I guess the last key takeaway from this New Direction press conference that I want to mention is that actually a lot of new tips were received by police after the release of the new sketch of the suspect, as well as the additional audio and the video clip of Bridge Guy walking. So, when I watched the entirety of pretty much every single press conference at this point that law enforcement has been on, and I will say that on this particular, press conference, the New Direction press conference, law enforcement definitely seemed very surprised and very grateful for the amount of media coverage that he got. So, it was a big thing. 2019, April 22nd, New Direction press conference was a big thing. It was like a national thing. You had like American nationwide news coverage on this thing. And so thousands of tips, apparently, a lot of tips have been received, shortly following that press conference. So the press conference definitely served its purpose. All right, so at this point in the podcast, we're moving to the ending part, or multiple parts. I should start with what is law enforcement doing right now. So I'm recording this on 2021 January 12th. So my findings as of right now is that earlier in the year 2020, last year, the infamous COVID-19 year, Sergeant Kim Riley said there was no annual presser because there was no new information. His quote is, "There's nothing new to report," Riley said, explaining why there is not a news conference this year. Quote, "Every year we've had something to report." So, Kim Riley, Sergeant Kim Riley is right now stating that there's nothing to report for 2020. Also in March of the same year, this is gonna be crazy, In Pursuit with John Walsh, a TV show with John Walsh, aired, where Sergeant Carter stated, quote, "We believe that somewhere between the new sketch and the old sketch is him," as he was pointing at the sketches. And then the Bridge Guys still. "He will be somewhere in between those two sketches. Somebody has got to know who this individual is." Hold up. I can see where the frustrations with law enforcement are coming from at this point. Now, this comment made by, Sergeant Carter definitely does not inspire confidence for obvious reasons. To me, it seems that law enforcement has no clue and had hit a wall in the investigation after this statement, because at first, 2019, they tell us specifically, do not focus on the first sketch with the taxi cab. Do not focus on that guy. They don't tell us why we should not focus on him, just don't focus on him. Focus on the newer sketch, the new looking dude, that's the guy. The older sketch is not a person of interest anymore. And now, in 2020 March, law enforcement Sergeant Carter says that the suspect, the killer, is somewhere in between the two sketches. You just told us not to focus on the first sketch. Yeah, I don't know what to make it. I don't know what to make of this, actually, you know. Maybe it's time to generate another press conference at this point and release more details. Maybe we could actually get, you know, for example, the entirety of the video. I would love to see that. Or maybe even a cause of death. I don't know, I feel like these details could be released to us, and at that point law enforcement would still have enough to keep close to the West for them to, you know, sort out the fake admitters for sure. You know, at this point, in terms of what is law enforcement doing right now, it seems to me that, from what I've gathered, that, you know, other than a confession from the actual killer or someone coming forward, the best hope for law enforcement at this point is just to release more information to the public, with the hopes of generating some new leads. So I think that's all they're doing right now. You know, they consistently state that this is not a cold case. It's not a cold case. I don't know, you know, definitely seems pretty chilly to me. Now, similar frustrations can be felt by Liberty's biological mother, Carrie Timmons. In February 2020, she actually made a few comments regarding her opinion of the investigation. She was not happy. You know, on one of the news coverage a year back in 2019, she did seem thankful and supportive. You know, that happened 1 year before this news coverage. I think it's from Inside Edition. And the main reason for her frustration is that law enforcement called off the search during the first night of the girl's disappearance. Remember when we were back in the timeline at 12 a.m., you know, at night, they called it off. They called off the search. One of the main reasons for calling off the search was the safety of volunteers. Even though the volunteers stayed all night and still searched, you know, the police only returned with the official search the following morning, I believe at 9 a.m. in the morning. And also, Carrie Timmons stated that if the girls would have been located earlier, the course of the investigation could have potentially been completely different than it is right now. And, you know, to that, I will say that it seems like, you know, the search dogs, because I think she mentioned something about the search dogs not being there. Well, Sheriff Thobe Lozenby actually stated that at the time of the girls' bodies being discovered, the search dogs were on their way. So apparently, I'm assuming that the search dogs could not have gotten to the location on the first day. I don't know the logistics of that, so I don't want to speculate too much there. And I will say that, you know, the bodies were actually located during daytime. Now let's imagine that, what if law enforcement did stay all night? Do we know for certain that they would have been located during nighttime? Because apparently they were found by someone visually identifying the bodies. You know, that weird situation with the two deer standing. Don't know what that was like. So it seemed like the bodies were pretty hard to find, actually. I don't know. I'm not really certain if the bodies would have been located during nighttime if police stayed there. Maybe they would, you know. I definitely want to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they would have been located earlier, and who knows? Maybe the course of the investigation would have been completely different at this point. We will never know that. Talking about like the newest developments in this case, because I do have like the last section of this episode, part 2 of the Delphi murders investigation, you know, newest developments section. There is actually a Reddit post inquiring about new information that, you know, recently was posted on Reddit, on the Delphi murders, you know, Reddit. Yeah, so I would say, you know, that the general feel online, not just on the Reddit, but like just in general online regarding this case is that, you know, law enforcement has not been able to handle the situation or even some people go as far as saying that they botched the investigation completely by releasing information in a very confusing manner. Now, I would be a supporter of this theory a little bit, that I do think that the information could have been released in a more clearer manner. I mean, they did have to use like post-press conference news bulletins that nobody gives a damn about and nobody actually read them, where they clarified the information that they stated on the news conference. The news conferences itself seemed clunky. Like, the New Direction press conference had like that cluttered desktop, everything was going wrong, like the mic was at one point like really disturbing to the ears. I don't know what that was all about. And one really disturbing trend that I've noticed, especially on the YouTube comments, there are really high voted YouTube comments, like a comment on YouTube with a lot of likes on it, that actually raise suspicions that someone from the law enforcement is responsible, and the whole thing is a big cover-up by the law enforcement pretty much. Now, I don't want to make any comments regarding this, since this is just the beginning of my investigation, and this does seem like a reach to me. As of the recording of part 2, it would definitely seem like a big reach at this point of my investigation that someone from the law enforcement could have, did this. So I think we need to tread really carefully here, and I don't want to accuse anyone who's not actually responsible for the murders. So to conclude the second part of my Delphi murders investigation, to me personally it does seem that at the time of this recording, early 2021, the case seems to have gotten cold, despite what law enforcement wants you to believe. And I do wonder whether or not law enforcement is actually contemplating releasing more information to us, maybe conducting a new big-time press conference. Because we know details such as the entirety of the video clip, or, the manner of the bodies being found, the cause of death. These things are definitely in the position of, these details are definitely in the possession of law enforcement that could be released to the public. So we definitely can expect that in the future, in my opinion, because, as the years go by, this case just seems to get colder and colder every year, especially this year. They actually even passed up on doing a presser, an annual presser, and there were no visible developments in the year of 2020, so we'll see what happens in the year 2021. But that's just about it for part 2 of the Delphi murders investigation on the JS podcast. I hope everyone enjoyed themselves. I will be returning most likely next week with part 3. Already have things mapped out to talk about on part 3 of the investigation. I'm glad that I'm finally done with the timeline. It did take a lot of energy to conduct this timeline. I did it to the best of my abilities. I hope everyone appreciated it and enjoyed it. If you don't mind, guys, subscribe to this channel if you want to see more investigations such as this. As I've said, for the foreseeable future, I'm sticking to the Delphi murders.